I show you my stuff with DM Scotty.
Hey guys, here's a miniature I used for my game, and I actually sculpted this miniature for my game. In the AP I'm playing, I'm doing a modified Kingmaker campaign, which is actually a Pathfinder module, but I modified it for my 4E group. So when we were running through it, there's an encounter with this giant shambler called Chandrilicus. And I really wasn't happy with any models that I'd seen. They just weren't big enough. Now I want to show you how big this thing really is when I put a miniature next to it. So here is a standard miniature, and look how giant that thing is next to it. I love it. I love how huge it is. And no shamblers were really nearly that big. So let me talk about this a bit, and I'll give you kind of a closer look at it. See some of the detail there. Now, doing a miniature can really seem daunting, but you know, it's like, it depends what you're doing. Humanoid type creatures can be really hard to sculpt unless you're a professional sculptor. Animals are a little easier, but stuff like this is really not that hard, because there's really no frame of, they can't say, oh, the nose is the wrong size, or the arms are too big, or the leg, because people can easily pick out when the scale of something is wrong. So sculpting something like a person or even a giant can be very daunting if you're not a good sculptor. Doing an animal is a little easier, and with fantastical animals you can take a lot of liberties, or creatures. But with this kind of stuff, which is totally non-human, it's really easy to sculpt. It's really not that hard to do this. Basically, it's just shapes. I've just rolled coils of clay mostly and just wrapped it around the different areas of the beast, and did some tendrils coming off it and around the mouth, and some on the bottom. So don't be totally intimidated by doing things like aberrations or this kind of thing, because it's really not super difficult. Now, I did sculpt this out of Super Sculpey. You could use the epoxy clay that I've shown you before, but the epoxy clay is much more expensive, and so I just went the Super Sculpey route. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the materials I used to make this critter. The first material I want to talk about is Super Sculpey, and I've shown this before. This is a great clay for doing projects like this. It's not as expensive as the epoxy, not as hard to work with. The epoxy can be very hard to work with. The great thing about Super Sculpey is it doesn't dry until you bake it. So you can keep working on it until you're satisfied with the result. With epoxy, it dries in a fairly short period of time. So doing a large model like that can be tricky. You have to build it up in layers and all that kind of thing, and be a fairly good sculptor. But with this stuff, it's really easy. Now there's two different kinds of Sculpey. There's Sculpey and Super Sculpey. I would always use a Super Sculpey if you're gonna do anything like this, or even doing little things for your dungeon. Now, Super Sculpey can also be great for doing stuff for your dungeon. You can do furniture. I've done wheels on carts like I showed on the Ogre Wagon. I've done all kinds of stuff with Super Sculpey. So with just a little bit of patience and practice, Super Sculpey can be a great medium to work with. Now, one problem I have with the sculpture is the Super Sculpey is not strong enough for the small areas of the sculpture. Like, see the arms? Okay. This would break off very easily without support. So what I've used is, I'll show you here, I've got some wire. So this is a fairly thick wire that I got at the hardware store, and I built an armature out of this. Now, I'm not going to go into building an armature in this video. If you're interested in building an armature, just go online. There's tons of there's tons of stuff online about how to build an armature for a sculpture. But yeah, I just use this wire, wrapped it up a little bit, put some clay on it, and baked that, and then built the rest of the model around that basic armature that I did. Sorry. So the armature is really needed in something like this with long arms or small areas. If it's thicker, you wouldn't really need the armature so much. But this kind of thing, I definitely needed the armature. Now, I also did an interesting thing with texture on the critter, and I'll see if you can see really close here. You can see it has some texture on it. And what I did was I used my flexible modeling paste and I stippled it on. Okay, so basically you just dump, or you just stick the brush into the paste, get it on the paste on there, and then when you put it on the model, you just dab it on like this. Okay, and that gives that nice little texture, and you can do that for a lot of other things too. But that gives a nice little texture on the model, and just didn't make it look smooth. So without me having to sculpt all that little detail on there, so that was a really nice solution and quick solution to that. So there you go. There's a Tendrilicus model that I did, and don't be daunted by making your own stuff, your own miniatures. Like I said, it goes from doing humanoid type things to animals and fantastical creatures down to like total aberrations that just really don't have any recognizable features as far as like scale or relationship to each other. So the aberration type creatures can be really easy and fun to make with the Super Sculpey. So I'll see you next time on I Show You My Stuff.
Hey crafters, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the DM's Craft. Make sure to subscribe, and I have tons of other videos, as you can see. I am the originator of the 2.5D method of crafting tiles. I also do dirt cheap terrain for the table. If all this intrigues you, make sure you check out all the videos below. Also, join my forum. We have lots of great crafters on there who give advice. I have a link above and below. And last but not least, remember, go forth and craft!